Christina Brady with us from Blacktower Financial Management. So, homeowners in Spain can now release equity from their Spanish property if the mortgage has been mostly or fully paid off.
Yes. Yeah? It's the same in the UK. I think what people don't realise is equity release is just taking out a lifetime mortgage on your property. And in the UK, it's available to over 55s. And what you've got to do is you've either got to, when you take your equity, you've either got to, if you've got an existing mortgage, you've got to pay that off, or else you can't have it. And so in Spain, really, it's got to be debt-free to get equity release. Now, the one problem with equity release
I was going to say, what's the catch?
The one problem is, and this happened before, I remember, I think they were quite popular after the crash. And what happened is people found out that the loan plus the interest was more than the value of their property. So they could. So actually. So
you pay interest on the money you release,
it's like a mortgage,
and on the amount that you owe. It grows.
So it grows and grows, and they couldn't get enough income or interest on what they'd borrowed to pay off the debt. So when they died, they actually owed more money, and their beneficiaries or their estate had to pay off that mortgage. And that was a big problem. So nowadays, when you get an equity release, there is one thing you've got to make sure you get, and I've got to make sure this is it. You've got to have a no negative equity guarantee. So if you take out an equity release, that company has got to guarantee that when you die and that property is sold, so the only time that property, you've got a lifetime interest, you can live there till you die or until you get put into long-term care. And when that happens, they've got to guarantee that there will not be any comeback on you. So you've got to have that guarantee. And if you go to any company for equity release and they will not give you a no negative equity guarantee, walk away.
Well, it's just getting to sound a little bit complicated. So what are the rates you get for your equity release? It depends,
right. If obviously you can take up to, I don't know what it is in Spain.
60%,
but I think in the UK it's only 50% of the value of your property you can take as equity release. And then it depends on what
they let you.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, and it depends what you negotiate on your mortgage rate.
No, so
obviously, if you'd done this before rates went up, it'd be a lot less. So now if you take out a mortgage, they may be charging you 6-8%.
Yeah, some at 5.6 or 8.9 seems to be.
So you've got to be very, very careful. That's why you need to make sure you've got this no negative equity guarantee. Because say there's a crash in the market and they sell that property and it doesn't cover that mortgage you've taken out.
Things in the past have been a little bit difficult with some Spanish banks. So I know I'm choosing my words carefully. So can you go to somebody who can help you with your equity release rather than going directly to the bank where you have the mortgage?
There are companies that do it. I'm afraid at Blacktower we don't recommend anyone does it because there's so many people had their fingers burned before.
Exactly my point,
and I still have people in who are still going to court in Spain where, as we said, the property value does not now cover the mortgage, and those companies are trying to force these people out before they're dead and take that property. And it has been going through the courts. I know one lot of clients did actually win their case, but then they're still waiting for the money and for it all to be settled. As we know in Spain, it takes such a long time to do anything. So people have got to be very, very wary. And people come to me and they say, can you help or can you recommend with anyone with equity release? I would say no. I would say if you are going to do it, at least do it through a bank as long as they will give you this guarantee.
Okay, the guarantee is all important. It does make sense, doesn't it, perhaps, for people over a certain age, say 55, if they want to stay in their own home.
Yeah, but most of them use it to do home improvements.
Oh, yeah, well, okay.
What's the point in that? I can see you doing it if you want to go on a world cruise or you want to give some money to your grandchildren to go to university. But to do house improvements on a house that is no longer yours, and when you die, it's going to, it's not even going to your children. What is the point? I don't understand. I'd rather downsize and buy something that I didn't need to work on and have that cash anyway.
Mm-hmm. So there are different ways of thinking about equity release.
Yes, there are. Yeah,
I think, and always you can go to your financial advisor to talk about that.
Yeah, and I would say, in my opinion, I'd rather downsize. Not owe any money to anyone, and know that I had something at least if I wanted to leave to my children, or something I could sell if I need long-term care. Because if you take equity release and use up all the value of your house, when you go into long-term care, how are you going to pay for it? You don't want to end up in a state institution or your
Few and far between.
or your family putting you on a plane and shipping you back to the UK, and you end up at Gatwick Airport and you're put in some state care home. You don't want that, so you've got to think very, very carefully. And salesmen for some equity release schemes are very smooth, very professional, and could talk you into selling your own mother, really. So be very, very careful. I had someone in the other day who said, we're thinking about equity release, and I said, well, what about your long-term care? And they said, well, we always assumed if one of us got ill, the other one would look after you. I said, well, say one of you dies and one of you needs long-term care. Where are you then? You haven't got enough savings, you haven't got anything. You've got to think about the financial impact, not just you're getting cash now to spend. Most of us are living longer and most of us will need care.
But speaking from my own point of view, most of us get a little bit more confused the older we get as well. So we kind of need a bit of help in this sort of area.
And these people are very convincing. If you're in your 70s and they're trying to convince you to do extra release, or that would be very difficult to get at that age, please be very careful. Even in your 50s and 60s, financial terms can be confusing. They can bamboozle you. They can give you figures you don't understand. Please think very, very carefully before you step on that ladder.
That's why you see quite a few people perhaps downsizing because so it doesn't leave.
It makes much more sense. Or sell your property and go into rented property, invest that money.
A lot of people do that too, actually.
Lots of people in Spain did that, especially with the inheritance tax rules, which now, luckily in the Valencia region, and in Murcia and in Andalusia, but there's still some areas, and it could always come back if the PP loses power and we get back in, it could change. But as I said, I'd rather consider downsizing or selling and going into rented accommodation. If you go into rented accommodation, invest that in a low-risk investment, giving you a rate of return that will pay your rent, and then you've got that money to fall back on if you need it at a later date.